Now, if we were to have a conversation with Descartes right now, he might ask us to think about the person who's kind of a legend here on campus, Zeke. He's an 11th year graduate student in physiology and neurobiology. He's kind of a procrastinator. He can't seem to get that dissertation written. You might have seen him around campus. He kind of has long, scraggly hair. It doesn't look very clean. He tends to have clothes that are pretty badly torn up. He tends only to show his face around dusk and thereafter. He hardly ever comes out during the daytime. He is nevertheless an incredibly knowledgeable neuroscientist. He's got a lab somewhere in the basement of Oak Hall, and he has enough knowledge about the human brain that he knows how to take a brain out of a cranium and stimulate it in such a way, put it in a vat of fluid that conducts electrical chemical impulses. He can put it in a vat of some kind and send impulses through that vat so that the brain is stimulated in just the way it would be stimulated if it were inside the cranium from which it was taken. That is, if you think about it, however, he does have a history of sneaking into the dorm rooms of students late at night and spraying enough ether around the room so that everybody stays asleep, and then taking one person, maybe it was you last night, I don't know, and bringing you down to his laboratory, removing your brain from your cranium, putting it inside of this vat of fluid, and then starting to send impulses through that fluid in which your brain is now floating. Now, if that had happened last night, then think about what would be happening right now. He'd now be stimulating your brain by neurochemical means to simulate experiences, perhaps experiences that were exactly like the ones that you would be having if you were, for example, sitting in front of your computer watching a philosophy lecture. That is to say, Zeke might have been following you around for the last couple of weeks, finding out about your schedule, learning about what you do every day, and saying, okay, if I were to synthesize, say, Mediha's daily life, I might know that at about 8:15 every morning she has the experience of drinking a latte, soy latte, but it's a latte, I know that much about her. And usually at about 11 o'clock in the morning she sends a text to or gets a text from one or both of her parents, and on throughout the day because Zeke and the people that he works with have been following Mediha around. Now he sneaks into Mediha's dorm room, takes her whole body, including brain, out, brings it down to the basement, carefully removes the brain from the cranium, puts the brain inside the vat of fluid, and now he starts stimulating that brain with impulses so that Mediha doesn't know any better. She has experiences that were just like the ones that she would have if she were waking up on a normal day. What Descartes might ask you to think about now is the question, how do you know that that didn't happen to you last night? That is, how do you know that your brain is not inside of a vat of fluid and being stimulated electrochemically by Zeke and his minions? Descartes will say, if you can't rule that out, then you're in a funny position because that means there are lots of things that you claim to know where that claim would be unjustifiable and perhaps even false. And even if you're not in the vat, you don't have a way of showing that you aren't, and so now it looks like even if you're in fact embodied as opposed to disembodied, you don't know that you are. So what can you do to ensure yourself that your brain is not inside of Zeke's vat right now? I challenge you to think of an experiment that will crucially distinguish between those two hypotheses. Hypothesis 1, your brain is inside your cranium and you're living your life in the normal way. 2, hypothesis 2, your brain's inside of Zeke's vat and he's stimulating you to make you feel like you're living your life in the normal way. I'm doubtful that there's any test you could perform to prove that one or the other of those hypotheses is the correct one. I want to suggest that any test you try to perform is one that will leave open the possibility that your brain is still floating in Zeke's vat. But if you can't rule out that possibility, then how can you claim to know that you are, for example, sitting in a chair rather than just seeming to do so? Now, you might feel sure that this hypothesis about Zeke is crazy, but maybe that's just prejudice on your part to be so sure. We take ourselves, when somebody challenges us on the question, how do you know? We take ourselves to be able to answer that question, here's how I know. Just being able to say I'm sure is generally speaking not a very good reply. Why should things be any different in the case of what's going on with Zeke?